Hello, hello.
I'm Savannah.
And I'm Elysia.
And this is Burden of Proof.
How is everyone today?
Well, they can't answer you, but I can.
They can.
Well, right.
You can always comment on our socials. You can comment if you listen on Spotify.
Yes.
Anyway, welcome back.
Welcome back.
And welcome new listeners. Let's attend to some business first.
Attend to some business, please, before we jump into the crimes.
Yeah, we have a couple shout outs for Sally and Kate.
Yes.
On
Sally,
Patreon.
Sally, you joined our Patreon a while ago. And
yes.
I was looking back and realized that I couldn't specifically remember giving you a shout out. And I wanted to make sure that we did. So we're doing it again.
So if we did, and this is your second shout out, it's well deserved.
It is well deserved. You're a longtime listener and we love you.
Yes.
And Kate, oh my gosh.
Welcome.
And so these listeners, these patrons have been so gracious and joined our new free tier on our Patreon page.
Yep.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about our free tier, Elysia?
So with our free tier currently, each month we put up a poll where you get to choose one of our cases.
And last week we covered our October one, which was Kirsten Costas. You guys have no idea.
If you are on Patreon, you can go and listen to the outtakes where Savannah struggles between the difference of Kristen and Kirsten.
I did. I really did. And I know that it's Kirsten. I've known that. But anyway. Yeah. So if you want to join our free tier, that's great. And if you join our free tier and you decide, hey, I want to be a little bit more involved, we have another tier as well. We have a $3 tier that includes the following things.
A monthly live session.
That's the best part.
Where we ask silly questions. Sometimes we talk about further details of a case, depending on what our listeners want. We interact with our listeners on there. We find out a lot more about you, which is always cool. They get a private Facebook group. They get access to our outtakes, things that don't make the final cut.
Yeah, like me saying Kirsten like 9 million times because I catch myself.
We'll be ad-free on there all the time.
Yes.
And now is the time to join.
Yes, please. If you're ever considering joining our paid tier on Patreon, we highly suggest you do that before the new year.
Yes.
Because things will be changing.
Yes, they will.
Okay.
For the better.
Yes,
but we're trying to get you an in.
Yeah, we're trying to give you a hookup, okay?
So you can be like the founding followers, as I said before.
And you're like, I was here before it was cool. And yeah.
Yeah.
Before we jump into your case, I have to talk about something that's going on TikTok, crime-wise.
Okay.
And I have to talk about this. So if you aren't on TikTok, you might not have seen the rug saga. Have you heard anything about this rug?
No, because I'm not on. I personally am not on TikTok.
I think it started to make its way over to Instagram Reels, but so basically this woman was in her backyard working on some yard work and she started digging, and in her yard she realized that she had just stumbled upon a rolled up rug like feet under the ground. Like, I don't know. I think she was doing a fence, like putting up fencing or a tree or something. Honestly, I don't think I watched the beginning of the series, but now I'm like, 9 parts in and invested.
Either way, she was digging for something that you'd have to dig.
Yes.
Several.
And found
few feet.
A full rug. Like, it's a rug. It's a
rug.
rug. There was some debate in the comments of whether or not it's a rug. She's like, it's a rug. I'm not stupid. So she sat on it for like a little while and was like, this is really weird. She called the cops. The cops came out and they're like, yeah, that's a rug and it's rolled up and it's buried, feet under. That's not good. But then they basically said, we don't have the resources at the moment to dig it up.
Right.
Because we'd have to get an excavator out here and all this stuff. But if you want to dig it up, we will happily come look at it. It's just that we don't have an excavator at our disposal at the moment.
Right.
So we're going to put it on the back burner, unfortunately. And she was like, okay. Everybody in the comments was like, girl, you need to dig it up.
I would dig it up.
I would dig it up.
I'd dig it up even if I had to do it by hand, and it took me weeks.
And she was like, I don't want to dig it up by hand, and I don't have enough.
Nobody wants to.
So she was basically like, no, we're going to stop.
You need to call the Winchesters. They're really good at digging
holes. They are really good at digging holes. So So then she got a bunch of people together and some people volunteered like, hey, I have an excavator. You can borrow it.
Nice.
And so she was about to do that. And then the day before they were supposed to do that, she got a call from the police and like, hey, actually, we thought about this again. And why don't we bring our cadaver dogs out and have them sniff the area? And she was like, oh, yeah, that's really smart. I don't know why we didn't think of that in the first place.
Right.
So she goes on live while they're doing this. And the dogs alert in the hole twice. 2 different dogs.
Yeah.
So they are definitely having to allocate some resources to getting this rug out of the ground and figuring out who was there.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'll keep you updated.
Well, yeah, we're going to have some more content on our social media now.
Yes.
We've established you can find vlogs and get ready with me content with Savannah. And I just am no good at that kind of stuff. So my plan was to do things like that, like update on current happenings in the true crime world.
I'm glad you saw the segue that I was laying out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So if not, I mean, you're welcome also because you're on TikTok and stuff. But if not, then I can always add it into my videos too.
Yes.
Wow, that's something. I can't imagine.
It was funny. My favorite comment was like, obviously, I want to know what's going on down there. But also, if that's where Marlene buried Earl after he drank too much, then maybe we should leave him.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the case in either way. We need to dig it up. So
yes.
I thought that one was funny.
This is also a perfect segue to our case today.
Oh my gosh, look at us. That was not planned. I
Not
completely
planned at
sprung the
all.
rug on Elysia when we started recording.
Yeah. I mean, there's no rug in this case, but it is a perfect segue.
All right.
But I don't want to give too much away first. So I think we can jump in now.
Let's do it.
All right. So our case today is a little different than usual, mostly in the fact that there's not a lot of information out there about Bonnie Haim's background.
Okay.
I have a theory on why that is, but we will get into that a little later. What we do know is that in 1992, 23-year-old Bonnie was married to her high school sweetheart, Michael, or Mike. He goes by, so I'll be calling him Mike. And the two were living in a house on Dolphin Avenue in Jacksonville, Florida, with their 3-year-old son, Aaron.
Ron.
Ron. Yeah. The couple worked together at Mike's aunt and uncle's construction supply company. So Mike was a manager there, and Bonnie worked there as a bookkeeper, and she was also basically like their IT support because she was the only one that was any good with computers. And, you know, small business, everyone must wear multiple hats.
Yep.
Obviously working for his Uncle Bernie and Bernie's wife, Evan, created a closeness between the two couples.
I've never heard that name, Evan.
Evan. Yeah, it's like Eve and Anne, but put together.
Oh, okay.
So Evan and Bonnie had become particularly close over the course of she and Mike's marriage. So Bonnie confided in her when things started not going so well.
Right.
When Bonnie decided to leave Mike, she opened her own bank account and had the statement sent to the office. She needed to save the money first, and she trusted that Evan would keep her secret. Unfortunately, Mike did somehow find out about it and became so enraged that Bonnie closed the account and instead regularly gave cash to a friend for safekeeping.
Okay.
According to Evan and Bonnie's sisters, she had saved enough money to put a deposit down on an apartment of her own and enroll Aaron in a new preschool. Not everything went according to plan, though. On the evening of January 6th, 1993, Evan expected Bonnie to stop over so they could finalize some plans for a baby shower they were throwing for a friend. Instead, Evan says she spoke with her on the phone, and Bonnie said she wouldn't be able to come over because she and Mike had gotten into a discussion.
A discussion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Evan offered to come over, or at least call her back later because she could tell Bonnie was upset. But Bonnie said no, she would be fine and would just talk to her the next morning. Instead, Evan and Bernie received a call early that next morning from a police officer friend asking if they'd seen or heard from Bonnie. He told them that Bonnie's purse had been found at a local Red Roof Inn and asked that they meet him and Mike there. A maintenance worker had found the purse fully intact lying in the dumpster and immediately called the police.
Right.
When Evan and Bernie arrived at the hotel, they were guided to one of the rooms where Mike and his dad were already there, standing with officers, looking over the bed, which had all of the purse's contents laid out. Nothing was missing. Her credit cards were there.
Yeah.
Everything of importance was there. In fact, there was even $1,000 cash that had been untouched. Mike was openly puzzled by the amount of money she had, rhetorically asking what in the hell was she doing with all this money? Despite the fact that he had told detectives that he and Bonnie had gotten into an argument the night before and she left around 11. I say that because being a spouse, if my spouse and I had a fight and then they abruptly left, I just naturally would assume, well, they took that cash out because they left. And it was found at a hotel, so maybe they were staying at this hotel, and that's why they got the cash out. Right. $1,000 is a lot, especially back in 1993, but, I mean, he was very puzzled by it.
Right.
As they stood in the hotel room talking to detectives, the dumpster was being searched for Bonnie's body because everyone instantly suspected foul play. But her body was found nowhere on the hotel's property. And neither was her car. So detectives told Mike to go home and wait in case Bonnie came home or tried to call home. Meanwhile, the detectives found out that a security guard for the hotel saw a woman fitting Bonnie's description going into one of the second floor rooms, and then later noticed a man standing on the second floor balcony, seemingly watching the dumpster.
Okay.
Now, the guy could have just been naturally like standing on the balcony and he just happened to be looking in that direction, but the security guard noticed like it seemed unusual. Yeah. So at that point, the lead detective focused on finding Bonnie's car.
Right, because, I mean, you know, you need at least a trail.
Yes. On a hunch, he searched through the closest airport's parking lots.
Probably pretty smart.
Yes. Lo and behold, Bonnie's car was there. It's almost as if she hopped on a plane to get away.
But she didn't take her cash and, like, her purse, and she wouldn't need ID, so she didn't.
Exactly. So why would she leave without all that cash?
Well, she couldn't have left without her, like, wallet and ID and stuff. And if everything was in her purse, so she didn't, somebody dumped her car at the airport.
Yes, exactly.
Which happened in another case.
You're so smart.
Yeah.
You're so smart. The detective knew it was unlikely, but confirmed with the airport that her name was, in fact, not on any of the flight manifests.
Always follow through. Always follow up.
Another suspicious piece of evidence was found inside her car. A large, dirty shoe print on the driver's side floor.
Alrighty.
While all of that is taking place, Aunt Evan decided to work with the local news channel to make a public plea for information. And then Mike actually joined her later that night for the 11 o'clock news with Aaron in his arms. However, many viewers were put off by the interview because Mike sounded solemn, but like matter of fact.
I don't know. That's kind of how I feel like I would be, though.
I have mixed feelings about that. Yeah, I do try to understand that not everybody is going to react. And just like my recent case about the Rogers family, like the husband had nothing to do with their murders, had nothing to do with any of it, but he just is a guy that is not super emotional all the time and a hard worker, and he just kept chugging along. He had his own little meltdown by himself, and he just was very private about that. But still, a lot of people are expecting a bigger reaction when your wife is missing. And basically, he just said, quote, "I just think she wasn't happy and she wanted to leave, and I couldn't really stop her from leaving."
Okay, that part is weird.
That part's a little weird. Like, I understand you got into a fight, but why would you still think that she just left?
Right. Even if she was planning on leaving, like, this isn't that.
Yeah. So it was just a little odd.
Did she fake her own death? Alicia's nodding no.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Interesting response.
We'll say at this point, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that even if she left the house after an argument with her husband, it wasn't her intention because she left her son behind.
This is true. I'm in the mindset because I just finished watching Kevin Can F Himself, so.
Oh my God. I wish that show could have lasted longer.
I know,
but the
ending was rushed, but it was good.
Rushed, but fantastic.
It was, rushed, but great.
Yeah. Detectives then turned their attention to the Haims' home and searched for any signs of a struggle, a crime scene, or of Bonnie.
Yeah.
They found nothing. Not in the house, not in the yard, nothing. So they organized a much larger search that included the woods near the hotel. Mike told the local news in a second interview that he and their family would not give up searching for Bonnie. And Bonnie's father offered a $2,000 reward for any information leading to finding her.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, detectives began digging deeper into Bonnie's life for any sort of clue that could point into where she was. What they found was a fairly big crack in the foundation of her marriage. Not only had Bonnie been planning on leaving Mike, but they found out that she had, in fact, cheated on Mike.
Oh.
When detectives interviewed the man in question, he informed them that it was just a one-night stand. They had not been in touch since this one time. But doing their due diligence, they looked into his alibi, they asked him to take a polygraph, which he did, and he passed. This, of course, led to then taking a closer look at her husband. Because if it ain't the boyfriend,
it's the husband.
It's probably the husband. So they started going back over his statement. He said that she'd stormed out of the house around 11 p.m. And when she didn't come home by 3 a.m., he went out driving around looking for her. He drove by family members' homes. Specifically, he drove by her mom's house first. And then he says that he drove around because he expected that she would be there. But when she wasn't, he drove around some more. But he never found her car.
Okay.
Detectives did confirm with her friends and family that Bonnie was indeed unhappy in the marriage. But no one, not a single person, believed that she would have left without her son, Aaron.
Yeah, that's not likely.
Several friends and family members had started growing concerned that Bonnie had told Mike she was leaving him the night in question. So the lead detective, Detective Hinson, says he tried to stay neutral at first, but after hearing all of this from friends and family, he really began to feel that Mike was the prime suspect, especially after they did find a pair of Nike sneakers size 10 that matched the print in Bonnie's car.
Yep.
But again, that's still circumstantial because
yeah,
he's the husband. So, of course, his DNA, his fingerprints, his hairs, his foot tracks, it wouldn't be unusual for that to be in her car.
Well, also, how many, size 10 Nikes are there that would match? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, it's the 90s. Everybody's wearing size 10 Nikes.
Yeah. So, Detective Hinson turned his focus on their son, Aaron. When it dawned on him that, well, she left and she left Aaron and there's no talk about them like having a babysitter or him going with a family member or anything.
So
he was with his father that night.
That's a good point. He would have been there with whatever happened.
Exactly. He said he didn't necessarily expect the 3.5-year-old boy to know exactly what happened, but wanted to see if he remembered anything that might be helpful. Hinson knew it was a delicate process, though, and he contacted Brenda Metters, a social worker with the Florida Child State Protections Team. She had ample experience interviewing children of all ages about very difficult things. Bonnie's mother, Patty, and Mike's aunt, Evan, sat in on the interview to help Aaron be more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It took a few hours and a Happy Meal before he opened up to Brenda.
I mean, same, buddy.
Yeah. But what he said sent shockwaves through the family that would divide them forever. Aaron said his daddy shot his mommy. Brenda asked, "What did he shoot her with?" Aaron said, "A gun." She asked where he shot her, and Aaron said in the stomach while pointing to his own stomach. Turning to questions that might include information that could be confirmed, Brenda asked him what his mommy had on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how she phrased it. Well, what did she have on? And she meant, what is she wearing?
Yes.
Aaron got very quiet and then whispered, "Red blood."
The goosebumps that just went my entire body. That is terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
They're still going. They're going down my legs. The goosebumps. That's so scary.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Wait, I'm not ready to move on from that. I'm sorry. So my initial reaction when they started talking to him and he said she was shot with a gun, my first thought is he's 3. How does he know what shot in a gun means?
Well, I mean, if his dad had we are in Florida.
Right. This is Jacksonville.
And if his dad had guns, which I believe that he did, we'll find out later, he did own weapons.
Mm-hmm.
A 3.5-year-old would know what a gun is, and
I guess that's fair.
if they've been around it.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
That's really scary, and I don't see how you could coach a 3-year-old into saying red blood. If they were going to try and say that he was coached by somebody trying to frame Mike, I can see how somebody could say that they coached him into saying daddy shot mommy.
Right.
I don't see how you could coach a 3-year-old into going red blood.
Right. She said throughout the interview, anytime that he would say something, I guess, incriminating about his father, like what happened, he would get real quiet.
Almost like...
And then, but when he said red blood, he like totally whispered it.
Almost like he'd been told, don't say anything. It's a secret.
It's a secret.
Shh.
Yeah.
It's a secret.
Yeah. That's what it was like.
Yeah.
And Brenda did say that, you know, through all her experience with these types of interviews, she could tell by the way he delivered the information that he was telling the truth. He wasn't making up a grand story that he was so proud to tell.
Yeah.
So she fully believed him, but not everyone was inclined to do so, which of course divided the family, but not in the way you would expect. As I said before, it was Bonnie's mother, Patty, and Mike's aunt, Evan, but she is his aunt by marriage. They are the two that sat in the room during the interview, or at least most of the interview. But Patty had actually gotten up and left the room before Aaron started fully telling the worst of it.
Okay.
Still, to most people's surprise, it was Evan who believed Aaron. Apparently, Patty never believed that Aaron said the things that Brenda claimed. And unfortunately, recording the interview wasn't a requirement at the time, so they had no way to prove it to her. So the two families were split. And what I mean by that was that you would expect that, like, Bonnie's family would think he did it, and his family would back him up and say, no, he couldn't, you know. But that's not how it was at all. In the Haim family, Mike's aunt and uncle, who he'd worked for years, thought he was guilty of killing Bonnie.
Mm-hmm.
Though it appears that the rest of his family either stayed neutral or supported him. And even more shocking was Bonnie's parents remained absolutely convinced that Mike was not capable of hurting their daughter, despite all of their other daughters. They had 3 other daughters. All of Bonnie's sisters thought he was guilty.
That is interesting. Well, I mean, honestly, I think that he shot her because I don't think that they coached a 3-year-old to say. I think that Aaron's behavior is what is gonna.
I don't see why. It wasn't an officer. Like, I might question it if, like, the officers had just gone in there and started talking to the kid and they're not experienced in how to go through that.
It's an expert doing
this. Why would a child social worker who has experience with these types of things?
Yeah.
Why?
She's there for the child.
Right.
She's, and that's the benefit of having such a neutral party.
No. Remember I said earlier that I had a theory on why we did not have more background on Bonnie?
Yes.
And I think that may be why. Because, oftentimes in true crime cases, it's the parents, but especially the mothers of the victims that share so much information with their child, because even when the child is an adult, because they're like, I want this to be in the spotlight. I want this case solved. I want my daughter found. And I will share literally everything and anything I can to keep them in the spotlight.
Yes.
To get it solved. They didn't believe he was guilty, and they didn't have any other suspects.
Right. They don't have anybody else.
They're kind of only looking at him. So they, of course, didn't. I mean, I'm sure they felt like they want it solved and they want her found. But at the same time, they weren't not cooperating with the investigation, but they weren't going to do anything that was going to like massively help point the finger at Mike. So we don't have some big background story.
Well, they may have been thinking, well, we don't want Aaron to think we thought his dad was bad if he's not. Like, what if they find her and she's not dead?
But even in the Dateline interview, years later, it was Bonnie's sisters who talked about how great Bonnie was. And her mother only talked about how great it was that she married Mike.
Huh.
They signed off on her to marry him like really young because, or not signed off, but I should say they supported it because they thought, oh shit, he's such a catch. Now, I say that knowing that could just be the way that the show was produced and maybe cut out a lot of stuff that she said, but really they didn't show much of anything of her getting emotional over Bonnie or saying like, oh, she was a great daughter. She was this, she was that. Like, none of that. That didn't happen. Or that wasn't shown if it did happen. Either way, it's kind of sad to me as a mom. It's kind of sad. Regardless of the division that it caused, the statements of a 3.5-year-old cannot be used to make an arrest.
I think that's dumb.
Especially when they had no body. They didn't know where they had not found her. That being said,
sorry.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Was it enough to hold Mike? Like to ask him some questions?
I mean, they interviewed him.
And is it not enough to take Aaron away?
We'll get there.
Because Aaron's saying that daddy shot mommy. I'm sorry. Exactly. Aaron needs to come to me.
Yes. So Detective Henson and the child protection team still believed that it was enough for the court to step in to protect Aaron.
I'm glad somebody's doing something.
Yes. So the judge ordered Aaron be sent to live with his Aunt Liz, one of Bonnie's sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike had supervised visitation twice a week. According to Liz, though, the visits were terrible. Aaron would always fall apart during them, and she would have to just like scoop him up and hold him the whole time. Because he just...
I mean, he's really young.
Basically wanted nothing to do with Mike.
Yeah. I mean, even if he hadn't, shot mommy, like, that's hard on a 3.5-year-old.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of 3-year-olds
You have.
in my past. And I saw clips of the interviews that they gave with the news channel right after. And like Aaron was sitting with his father and seemed fine with his father in the moment. So I could see how the trigger would be he told the secret. And then I don't know what happened after that.
Yeah.
I don't know that they immediately took him away from
right.
Mike.
Like it may have been a few days.
Exactly. So I don't know if something happened between him being questioned by Brenda or, you know, and then having this court order go through. If Mike did something to scare him in that time, it's hard to say.
Right.
But either way, according to Liz, she was like, this is not a good situation.
Yeah, we need to stop these visits.
And eventually, I think it was about a year or so, the stress took its toll on her, both physically. Apparently, she started having some health issues herself. And it took its toll on her family, which I understand. You're taking on another kid, and it's a big deal. And a kid with trauma, and it's a big deal. So she looked into further options as to, like, she's like, I want to do right by Aaron, but I need to do right by my family too.
Yes.
So she found out that Aaron could be placed in foster care and that Mike's visitation would be stopped then.
Oh.
Yes. She believed that would be the best thing for Aaron because she felt like he's never going to heal until he can just go and heal and be away from this.
Twice a week is a lot when it's that upsetting.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Liz petitioned the court to have Aaron declared a protected witness so that once he was out of her care, she could be confident that Mike will not get visitation. Because he probably would have been cut off for visitation at first. But to my knowledge in the foster system, they still ultimately always want to reunite biological parents with their children. So he could have potentially eventually got visitation again. But by her doing this, he was considered a protected witness should criminal charges ever be brought against Mike. So it was just a full, like, nope, cut off.
Listen, shout out to Liz. She's really doing her research on how best to protect him, like even putting him through the system.
I agree. At 5 years old, Aaron went to live with foster parents Ronnie and Jean Fraser. Actually, because it's American, they might pronounce it Fraser. Yeah. But it's spelled the same as Jamie's, so I'm taking it. All they were told was that Aaron's mother was missing and his father lost custody. Okay, so they go into this, like,
completely blind.
Basically.
Which isn't good considering that, you know, Aaron needs some therapy.
Well, he was. They had him in therapy and stuff. However, 6 months or so into his stay, Aaron began telling them about his dad shooting his mom.
Just like over breakfast cereal. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I'm trying to like put myself in their shoes.
Right.
And you're like doing the right thing. You're doing like a great thing by being foster parents and you get this kid and you're like, yay, we're going to help people. Daddy shot mommy.
Yeah. As Aaron grew more trusting of his foster parents, he started giving them like more and more detail. After some months, after like 2 or 3 months, I think she said, Jean Fraser began documenting what he would tell her.
Oh, good job, babe.
And then would share it with his team of mental health professionals.
Yes.
In these statements, Aaron said that his dad killed his mom and then threw a pocketbook away in a dumpster near their house.
Right. Almost as if that's exactly what happened.
He went on to indicate that he helped dig the hole where his dad buried his mom. Jean says that Aaron was also very determined to find Bonnie. He would occasionally ask her to take him out to look for her, and on at least one of those occasions, as she headed to the car, he went back into the backyard, into their shed or wherever, and grabbed a shovel before meeting them at the car.
Oh my God.
I know.
Oh my gosh. That
Can
is
you imagine
so
being
much
like
to
it's
process.
yeah.
Okay.
And what do you do? Like, I'm trying to put myself in Jean's shoes of like, what the hell do we do? Like, but she would take him and they would just drive
I think
around.
That's what you do.
They would just drive around. I don't know that he ever actually got out and like dug anywhere because I think he was waiting till he saw something that like triggered the memory. I think he was doing that to try and jog his memory to try and find her. But
because he probably doesn't understand the finality. Like, he thinks if they go and dig her up, then mommy's back.
Possibly. I mean, at that point, he's like 5, 6, 7. This goes on for a while.
Okay. So he's a little older.
Yeah. So I think he understood, but I think he just wanted that closure or felt like we need to find her. Like, she's not where she's supposed to be, kind of thing. You know?
Oh my gosh.
They never did find her, though. The case, of course, grew cold. Eventually, Aaron stopped asking, and the Frasers did everything they could to give him a loving and stable childhood from that point on. They gave him opportunities to do just about everything. He played sports, he took karate, he rode dirt bikes, he went fishing regularly.
Did they adopt him, or was he still technically a foster?
We're going to get there.
Okay.
According to him, he could not have asked for better parents. His Aunt Liz remained committed to ensuring Aaron was taken care of and is confident that she made the right choice, saying this was the best thing. The Frasers have been fantastic. So by the time he was 10, the Frasers really wanted to adopt Aaron. So Liz and her other sisters did what was right, and they all agreed that the Frasers had been wonderful and he belonged with them.
Mm-hmm.
So Liz went back to court to have Bonnie declared legally dead and Mike's parental rights fully revoked.
Which is hard because I don't know about in Florida, but I know in a lot of states he would have to sign that, saying that he's not going to fight that.
He might have. I'm not sure. He did. If he was
okay.
expected to, he did sign it. I mean, at that point, Aaron's 10.
Yeah.
Like, he hasn't had custody. He hasn't even seen him in years at that point. And that's how Aaron Haim became Aaron Fraser.
Good for him. That's good.
But Liz didn't stop there.
I'm glad.
Next, she sued Mike on behalf of Bonnie's estate for wrongful death.
Now that she's legally dead, you can do that.
Mike neglected to show up for court, so in 2005, a judge ruled in favor of Aaron and Liz for the amount of $26 million. Of course, Mike didn't have that much money, but he did still own shares in his Uncle Bernie's construction supply company, and he still owned the house on Dolphin Avenue, which he was no longer using anyway. Mike had been long gone by that time. He had moved to North Carolina and was remarried, but he kept the house in his name here. And he would rent it out. Okay. So at just 16 years old, Aaron became the owner of his former home and of the shares to his great uncle's company. With Aaron thriving and Bonnie's case long closed, Detective Hinson told him and the Frasers that he's always there if they need him.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually he retired. Never would any of them dream that they would, in fact, need to call him one Sunday morning.
I know what's going to happen. I know. I'm so excited.
Aaron no longer really remembered anything that happened. Like, he long forgot. Yeah. I mean, like most of us, what's your earliest memory? Like, you know.
Not 3.5.
Yeah. And he barely remembered even the things of like him telling the Frasers what happened and the therapy that he went through and all of that. He, you know, he's just like, it's not active memories for me. So when the time came that the house on Dolphin Avenue was like, okay, this is not just in your name. Now you're responsible for this. It's your responsibility to take care of the house, sell the house, do whatever you want with the house. He didn't think twice because he's like, yeah, I don't really want anything to do with this house because obviously I know what happened in my life. But
I mean, it's just because they didn't find a judgment, he knows.
Yeah. And
Like,
so
he's been told.
he knows. And so he was like, I didn't really want anything to do with the house. But at the same time, it wasn't like, oh no, I can't go in the house or I can't have,
Yeah.
He's like, I don't have super emotional ties. But I also kind of feel weird keeping it. Like, I don't really want to keep it. So he went in and found like, okay, it's been a rental for several years. It needs a lot of improvements.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a DIYer. And like I said, he didn't get emotional seeing the house again. So he was like, I'll do the improvements myself or whatever I can do.
Well, he's
myself.
young. Like, you don't have a lot of disposable income to dump into it. So,
right. At this point, he's a young adult, but he is married and stuff. So it was 2014 is where we are.
So he's older.
That's when the last renter moved out and he decided, okay, I'm going to go assess the house, figure out what needs done. And he found that it was a wreck. And so he started things inside. He repaired things. He remodeled some things. And then he moved to the outside. And the backyard had a swimming pool and an outdoor shower. But he found that they were in disrepair, but it wasn't worth replacing. He said that the market in that neighborhood kind of capped at prices that would not warrant the investment into it. So he decided to fill in the pool and remove the outdoor shower. Now, he calls his brother-in-law to help him, and they rent an excavator, and the two got to work on that weekend. And come Sunday morning, they're like, okay, we're going to take out this outdoor shower. And as many less experienced folks do when renting large machinery like that, they missed the mark and they broke a pipe connected to the outdoor shower. So they grabbed shovels to dig around it, to find, carefully up against the house to try and find where the leak was exactly. And as Aaron's digging, he broke through a plastic bag. And then he found a broken piece of something that was rounded, and he thought it was a coconut shell. And he says he paused and was like, why would there be a coconut shell buried here, like in a plastic bag?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Aaron.
Yeah, he picked the piece up and realized he couldn't tell what it was exactly. So he handed it to his brother-in-law, and he looked closer at the hole. And they moved around the dirt a little more. And that's when he says he saw some teeth and a spot that looked like the brow bone above the eye socket. Reality set in and they immediately stopped. He's like, okay.
Drop it. It's not a coconut shell. It's a piece of a skull. You need to put it down.
Yeah. So he immediately called his mother, Jean, who he obviously referred to as his mom at that point, and asked if she still had Detective Hinson's number. She, of course, was shocked.
Like, why?
and asked why. And he explained, I think I just found my biological mom buried in this backyard.
I mean, I knew as soon as you said he had never sold the house. I was like, she's there.
Yep. So Jean rushed to call Detective Hinson, who at that time was retired. And she informed him that they think Aaron found Bonnie in the backyard. And Detective Hinson was stunned and asked, what backyard? Like, what are you talking about? What backyard? And she said, on Dolphin Avenue. The detective later in interviews admits he got kind of defensive and argumentative because he had searched that backyard himself and never found a trace of a freshly dug spot or Bonnie's body. But he still was like, okay. So he called the sheriff's department to go to the scene first since he was retired. And then he headed there himself. And on his way, he called one of the sheriffs that he knew personally. And they confirmed that it's human remains. And he lost it. Even in his interview all these years later, he started tearing up and crying. And he was like, I had to pull over the side of the road. I could not hold my composure. And they asked him why. And he said, well, no, I was arguing with her because, I didn't find it, but not because of my ego. He was devastated that he might have missed it. and that Aaron had to be the one to find her.
Right. Right. I mean, as a detective, you think that that's your job, is to you know, protect people from stuff like that and to do it yourself. But nobody has set any indication that says that they didn't do everything they could. I mean, they can't excavate the whole yard looking for.
Right. And once he was there and saw where she was buried and everything, he realized, you know, yeah, we missed it. But like, I think he realized kind of like why they probably missed it. Now, they did not just find part of Bonnie or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
She was fully intact. They found not only her skull and bones, the bones were disintegrating, but they found her ring, her acrylic fingernails that she wore, her clothing, or at least some of her clothing, and a .22 caliber shell casing.
Okay.
About 4 months later, DNA testing confirmed it was Bonnie, and her death was ruled a homicide. However, they could not determine that she in fact died by gunshot, nor could they link the shell casing to any weapons owned by Mike because it had significant corrosion.
Right.
I mean, they're confident that she was shot because there was a wound in her hip bone, which I think I get into during the trial because the judge had to rule on it, but they're fairly sure she was shot. They just don't know that that's what actually finally killed her.
Okay.
So, in August of 2015, Mike Haim was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. As soon as the detectives in North Carolina asked him if he could think of anything from Jacksonville that could come back to him, Mike said, "Yeah, my wife." The detective told him, "Yes, that's why we're here. She was recovered." And Mike simply said, quote, "I will not make any statements at all." So he lawyered up and did not have to face trial for another 4 years.
That's a long time, man.
Yep. While they had more than a 3.5-year-old statement at this point, Mike would no doubt be pleading not guilty. I mean,
it's a lot of circumstantial evidence.
Yes, it wasn't a slam dunk case. They would have several witnesses testify, including 2 inmates that he was in with during his time before trial, who both swore that Mike had confessed to them since his arrest and that he killed her because she was having an affair. They also had a former tenant who lived in the house on Dolphin Avenue say that it was written into her lease that she was not to dig or plant anything in the yard, and she was to always put her dogs in her bedroom when leaving the house, which is sus, but still not
right. So
not without reasonable doubt.
He doesn't want them outside dogs digging.
Yes. So prosecutors were counting on one big fact to sway the jury: that Aaron found Bonnie buried in the backyard of their former home was pretty damning evidence, albeit still kind of circumstantial. This would definitely be needed because the defense motioned for both the shell casing and Aaron's statements as a child to be excluded.
Why? What was their reason?
Because the coroner or the medical examiner could not confirm that the gunshot was what killed her.
Okay.
So they wanted that out, and they wanted it was so long ago. He currently doesn't remember his statements or remember what happened, so he can't confirm, like, yes, I said that when I was 3.5 years old. He can't go on the stand and say, yes, this is what I told them when I was 3.5. So they wanted it to be excluded. But fortunately, the judge denied the motion on the shell casing, stating it was relevant because, like I said, she had an injury in her hip bone that matched the
well, it was found with the body. I feel like that's it's relevant.
I mean, yeah,
in my humble opinion,
defense would argue like, well, he had guns and maybe it just like it could have just been there, could have just like, who knows. On Aaron's statements, the judge ruled that Brenda Metters could testify to what Aaron said as a child, but
Mhm.
only on the identification of who hurt his mother, not the details of everything.
That's interesting. Okay.
This gave way for the defense to cross-examine under the premise that just because Aaron said his dad hurt his mom doesn't mean he killed her. However, it also allowed for Aaron's testimony to simply focus on the finding of her remains, which was, in my personal opinion, the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
especially for him, because he doesn't need to relive that trauma.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the defense did not cross-examine Aaron, but that may have been because part of their evidence was an anonymous letter that had been sent to the Jacksonville PD years earlier. It was really just a very short typed note that said, quote, Bonnie Haim, period. Dolphin Avenue, Jax, period. The body is buried in the yard, period. Bring a dog with you, period. Hurry, period. Signed, anonymous.
Bruh, where has this been?
The defense proposed that the real killer was never caught because the investigators only focused on Mike and never followed up after receiving that letter. They didn't take it seriously.
I mean, I take it seriously. Mike told somebody.
Perhaps. That's actually pretty clever of you.
He told people in jail, clearly.
The defense suggested that perhaps someone else killed Bonnie somewhere else.
Right, that's what they're going to say.
And then eventually moved her and buried her in Mike's backyard to make it look like he did it, which is why the police didn't find her, like, when they first investigated.
She could have been moved there, but I'm not saying that somebody else moved her.
Yep.
I think
I
he could have moved
Same.
her there afterwards,
Yeah.
after they investigated and looked and whatever.
agree. Yep. Then they did what we always love. They put Mike on the stand.
Oh my gosh.
Mike testified to the same thing he told investigators 26 years prior, that Bonnie walked out and he never saw her again. In a similar fashion to his demeanor when Bonnie went missing, he was very, very calm, very monotone.
Very cutesy, very demure.
Yes. He said she had been unhappy for a month or two, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly when or why. He claimed that he expressed concern about her state of mind and even spoke to Patty, his mother-in-law, about it, trying to figure out why Bonnie was so unhappy. He said that Bonnie, quote, didn't appreciate calling and getting her mother involved in our relationship.
Well, yeah.
So that's why he assumed that when she took off, she went to Patty's to ask her about the conversation that he had with Patty.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't really buy it.
Just as he stated before, he said that when she didn't come home by 3 a.m., he drove by Patty's house to see if her car was there, and when it wasn't, he drove some more looking, but never found it. He, of course, also directly stated that he loved his wife and would never have harmed her, nor did he tell other inmates that he had. The prosecutor managed to get under Mike's skin a little, though. His tone rose a bit, and you could see his blood pressure raise as he turned red, but he still remained relatively calm. Like, he's like an eerily calm person.
Okay.
When asked why he didn't call Patty at 3 a.m. when he was so concerned, because you have a 3-year-old kid. You're waking this 3-year-old kid up in the middle of the night and taking him out to drive around looking.
Yeah, why didn't you just call her?
Yeah. So the prosecutor's like, why didn't you just call?
Yeah. That's valid.
You're saying you and Patty are chummy. You already had a whole conversation about your marriage. Why didn't you just call her at 3 a.m. and say, like, hey, have you seen Bonnie? Bonnie left hours ago. And Mike said, well, I talked to her the next morning, to which the prosecutor pointed out that you only talked to her after Bonnie's purse had been found in the dumpster. Mike claimed that it, quote, didn't alarm him until they called about the purse. And the prosecutor snapped, saying, "It did alarm you, because at 3 a.m. you're driving around the city allegedly looking for her."
Yeah.
The entire trial was fairly brief. I think it lasted like 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
But that gives you an idea of how contentious it was between prosecution and him. The jury only took 2 hours to deliberate and came back with a verdict of guilty. Not only did they find him guilty of second-degree murder, they also decided that he should be sentenced according to the state's request of what is called an upward departure sentence based on aggravating factors. In this case, the aggravating factors were they believed him to have killed the victim in front of a family member, that the crime was committed during the commission of tampering with evidence, and that it all inflicted severe physical or emotional trauma on both the victim and the victim's family.
Yep.
So, because of that, Mike was sentenced to life in prison. But the moment wasn't exactly what Bonnie's family thought it would be. Her sisters say they felt just as devastated, that his conviction gave no sense of relief from the grief they felt.
No, I'm honestly, I'm kind of feeling the same way right now.
Yeah.
They've known for so long and he's been able to live free. So did they really get any justice?
Yeah. And from one of my sources or something I read, he basically lived, I think he retired early. He lived off of her life insurance policy.
That is insane.
However, Patty, Bonnie's mother, still believes Mike is innocent. And when asked what she missed most about Bonnie, she said the other kids she might have had. And that she just doesn't have the words to express the time missed.
That is so weird.
I know this sounds very biased. I am very biased about her mother. I just, I don't know if her other daughters, they have nothing to do with her or not at this point. But I know if I was in their shoes, I sure as hell wouldn't. I couldn't. Okay. I wouldn't be able to get over that.
No. So Bonnie was 23 when she was killed?
Yeah.
Right. I'm a 22, almost 23. I'll be 23 in like 5 months or so. And I'm sorry, my mom would miss me for so much more
than
the half eggs in my uterus.
Yeah. And not only that, but that's so freaking insulting to Erin.
Right.
Like she did have a kid. You had a grandchild that you don't have a relationship with because you refuse to believe him.
Right.
What is that? What
so
is that?
Weird. That's so weird. That is a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
That is a weird thing to say.
So Erin says that the conviction gave him a sense of relief to have it all end. Like, it's done. It's final.
Yeah.
Erin also says that he believes he was finally ready to handle finding her after all those years. So he thinks it was God's plan that she be found by him when she was. Like, that he find her, but not until he was ready to find her.
Yeah, I mean, it was at a point in his life where he was ready for it, Yeah.
Mike, of course, appealed.
Yeah, whatever.
Claiming that Brenda Metter's testimony was hearsay, that the court erred in allowing the shell casing evidence in, and that he should have been sentenced under guidelines in effect at the time of the offense, not at the time of his trial. The District Court of Appeal found no error in the trial court's decisions and affirmed his life sentence. However, it appears that he may have continued the appeals process and in 2023 filed another appeal. I couldn't find the actual documentation, but in a news article, it talks about it. And in that one, I believe he may have added the claim of ineffective counsel.
They always like to throw that one in there.
Yeah. I could not find, like I said, I couldn't find the actual court documents on it. So I don't know if it's actually been dealt with because now we're in 2024 and sometimes things take years.
Yeah.
So yeah, his appeals process is probably not over, but I can't imagine that they're going to not deny all of his appeals.
Yeah.
But I will do my best to keep tabs on it and update y'all if the courts were to shock us by giving him any leeway whatsoever. And yeah, so that is the story of how poor Bonnie Haim came
What a tale
to be. But as far as I can tell, Aaron Fraser now is well.
Good.
He turned out well, considering such a tragedy happened so early in his life.
Well, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Was a great case. I'm
Thank
still
you.
processing it.
You know me. I love the cases with a twist.
Red blood. That's so scary. Oh my gosh.
I know. Can you imagine coming out of the mouth of a little 3-year-old?
No, I can't.
And especially when you see the pictures of him at that age, because he's got a little bowl cut, like the little straight
oh my gosh,
bangs just over his eyebrows all the way around. He was such a cute kid.
He's like a little 90s haircut.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, great job. Thanks for listening all the way to the end, guys.
Yes. If you have made it this far and you'd like to receive a shout out on social media, you can leave us an hourglass for Bonnie. Her time was cut short.
Yes.
Sadly.
Yeah. And if you do that on any of our social media posts about this case, you'll be entered in for Sunday shoutouts on our Instagram and Facebook stories.
Yes.
And other than that, we will see you guys next week.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much.
Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Burden of Proof Pod and email us at burdenofproofpod@gmail.com.